Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and what if I told you that Apple stole from the actual YouTuber, okay?
And I would say that it's pretty complicated. Apple Intelligence is one of those things that you might actually notice is coming out sometime this fall. So yeah, this is basically AI for everybody else. And I would say it's a pretty huge thing for a lot of people who are actually iPhone users. If you have the most recent devices, you can make images, you can make emojis, you can make responses, you can categorize your email. A lot of the stuff will use artificial intelligence to intelligently make your device easier to use. And it's going to be one of those things where, like, I feel for a lot of people, it'll be something that absolutely changes their life or makes their experience almost revolutionary. And of course, the data that is used to help this artificial intelligence doesn't just come out of anywhere. Now, Apple actually came out and said that nothing that this intelligence software used was built off of YouTube videos. In fact, if anything, it was actually all related to something known as OpenELM, which, if you check this, you can actually see that OpenELM is one of their open frameworks, and you can actually play around with it from my understanding. So it's pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, Apple made a response, and I kind of wanted to include that in here. But it doesn't change overall what this company was discovered to be doing, right? And not just Apple, but plenty of the other big tech companies. And let's get into that.
Now, if you've been following some of the wildest, reveals lately when it comes to artificial intelligence, you might have heard that Apple, NVIDIA, and a company known as Anthropic, you don't know who they are? Well, they're an AI research firm that actually works on intelligent artificial intelligence models like the Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Well, apparently they were reportedly scraping from YouTube videos without any permission, by the way, to train the models that they then input into their hardware and sell for millions upon billions of dollars down the line, okay? Now, to give you an idea about it, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to give you guys a quick understanding of how big some of these companies are, okay? So when you look at the biggest companies in the world right now, Apple is by far the biggest company by market capitalization in the entire planet, okay? Valued at $3.6 trillion, okay? That's trillion, not billion, trillion dollars. And of course, beyond them comes Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google, Amazon, and then a fucking oil company from Saudi Arabia, okay? That used to be top dog. So these are by far some of the largest companies ever, and if you look at the top three, their big bread and butter is artificial intelligence these days, and especially generative artificial intelligence. You know that thing where it generates images, music, straight up page Word documents entirely for you on prompt, okay? Now, to understand, artificial intelligence is not like, that science fiction artificial intelligence yet that is completely sentient, shit like Skynet, where the entirety is to destroy humanity. Yet, okay? I say yet, because AI could eventually reach to a point where it might decide to throw nukes at us, but this is not that kind of schizophrenic video. No, the kind of schizophrenic video this is one rooted in reality. Artificial intelligence relies on training data that is gathered from actual users, okay? Actual people producing content on the internet or people that are just posting stuff on social media. It amalgamates all this information, trains off of user-generated data to basically regurgitate information as a human being would. And it's this data that is so controversially acquired that people have questioned where it has come from. Now, based on a lot of reports that have been coming out, one from this Proof News, they found that the top wealthiest AI companies basically use material from thousands of YouTube videos to train their artificial intelligence. And the companies did so despite YouTube's rules and terms of services. In fact, the investigation actually ended up finding that they used subtitles from 173,536 YouTube videos, siphoned from more than 48,000 channels. If you're one of the largest channels on the internet, you might have had your information scraped without your knowledge and used by companies like Anthropic, NVIDIA, Apple, and Salesforce, okay? So to give a quick idea of how this works on YouTube.com, so for instance, this video right here by Red Fox RPG, Can You Beat Metal Gear Solid V as Naked Snake, okay? Let's say you're an artificial intelligence and you want to scrape some Metal Gear content. Well, all you do is access this page, and you can use tools like Whisper, which we'll look at in a little bit, or you can actually pull up every single video's transcript, which is freely available, by the way, and you can basically look at every single word said throughout the video. Now, if you use tools like ChatGPT or any AI tool and you ask, hey, can you tell me what this video is about? There's a good chance that the tool actually goes to this page, scrapes this transcript, and builds an AI-generated summary based on what it has actually scanned through the video. Now, could it be accurate? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't understand context or jokes, but generally, if you're somebody that just wants to get a quick summary of what a video is about without putting the attention towards it, this might be the option, right? That's what some people will use it for. Now, there are other tools like this, for instance, Whisper, which OpenAI proudly distributes, and you can download this, get this Python script basically up and running, and it will effectively do transcription based on hundreds of thousands of hours of training data, and it'll actually work, from my understanding, with multiple different languages. Languages that, all the way range from English to Urdu to Hindi to Tamil to, Hebrew to Azerbaijani to anything imaginable here. So these are softwares that you can download right now and get basically setting up in minutes to run on anything that can run Python, scripts. And it's through this that YouTube is effectively being scraped like a little whore every single day by some of the biggest companies and YouTube's or Google's biggest competitors in the space. Now, I've said YouTube is one of those services that Google mostly keeps, not because it makes crazy money or anything for their site. I think recently they profit, but usually the site was kind of operating on a loss or a break even. And for Google, the company above YouTube, having YouTube as a place of, training data that was basically being offered to them on a silver platter, thousands upon thousands of hours of uploads every hour given, YouTube looks at that as training data for its big AI company in the sky. Now imagine if Google had realized that every single one of their competitors, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, decided we're also going to jump into the pile and just use the information you guys get for free for thousands of other tens of thousands of YouTubers on a daily basis. I'm sure Google would be fucking pissed. And if you look at YouTube's actual terms of services, they literally say you are not allowed to access the service using any automated means, such as robots, botnets, or more importantly, scrapers, except A, in the case of public search engines, in accordance with YouTube's robots.txt files, and with YouTube's prior written permission, which I am sure YouTube has not ever fucking given in this situation. So when you look at the robots.txt file, which you can go by putting in youtube.com/robots.txt, you can see that they literally disallow access to, the API, comments, feeds, videos, get videos, live chats, logins, so on and so forth. Now, the thing about the robots.txt file, for anybody that doesn't know, this is basically a consent form written by websites to basically tell search engines what they can and cannot access. This does not mean that those search engines cannot still violate these websites and break the terms of service. If you understand a robots.txt file, the limitations are that they may not be supported by every search engine. The instructions cannot enforce the crawler behavior to your site. It's actually up to the crawler to obey them. While Googlebot and other respectable web crawlers obey the instructions of the files, other crawlers might not. And for some of these AI companies, they don't give a shit about any of this. They will just scrape all the free data they can to make their AIs more powerful and sell that data and then use it to enrich themselves with billions of dollars, okay? Different crawlers may interpret syntax differently, and a page that's disallowed can still be indexed if linked to from other websites. The downloads were reportedly performed by a nonprofit called Eleuther AI. Okay, so according to a research paper by Eleuther AI, the data set that they were basically selling to these companies or giving to them was part of a compilation the nonprofit called The Pile. Most of the Pile's data sets are accessible and open for anyone on the internet with enough space and computing power to access them. Academics and other developers outside of big tech made use of the dataset, but they're not the only ones. So Apple, Nvidia, Salesforce, companies that are valued really highly, use that pile to train artificial intelligence. So you go to this Eleuther AI, and you can see that it literally is a group that wants to empower open source artificial intelligence research, right? So they've got multiple different avenues of research, multiple different pieces of publication, and of course what they provide are those actual data sets. Now think about these data sets, this pile data set right over here, if you want to give it a download and give it for yourself, this is just freely accessible.
Now, interestingly enough, if this is true entirely, Proof News actually made a search engine that allows you to look into some of these data sets and see if your channel was actually used to train artificial intelligence. Now, one thing that I found really interesting is that a lot of the channels that you search up might not be, but for some channels, like Philip DeFranco, for instance, if you search him up on this, his information apparently has been used 58 times in covering this artificial intelligence. And of course, maybe it's using some of the most top recognizable YouTubers, but if these people haven't ever given their consent to this information or just letting their transcripts be used, maybe that should have been something that should have been detailed early on, I guess. That's really where I think the controversy stems from.
Now, I'm not so much against AI whatsoever. What I am, however, against is a lot of these companies who are basically profiting off of the backs of YouTubers, artists, writers, people that have put time and effort into their content, put actual, unique content out there in some cases for a lot of these YouTube channels, like Mr. Beast, for instance, and basically have downloaded that information en masse and are using it to enrich themselves for billions of dollars, sometimes trillions in the market. Now, here's the real fucked up part about this situation, too. There has been no consent offered here, right? So, the thing about AI data sets is, obviously, if you think about copyright situations, obviously there are people who are going to be concerned that if you just download an entire YouTube video's transcript, and it's not just a YouTube video. Imagine if it's like a movie, or if it's like a television show, or if it's like, an actual piece of writing, right? Like you downloaded that, you copied it into your algorithm, and now you're just building your data set off of it. There are serious copyright implications that might become a problem down the road. Now, obviously, for a company as large as Apple and Nvidia, right, they can't afford to actually source and create their own data. But obviously, it's a lot cheaper if you can go to a free source and just work off of that.
One of the interesting things that Apple details as well is their model training, which is where they actually, help get the actual foundations to power the generative artificial intelligence. So for Apple, you can see when it comes to Apple Intelligence, right, services, developer tools, they use information that is licensed from third parties. So, they'll go to, I don't know, like Shutterstock or something, or any organization that'll have images that they can get in full resolution to then help power their generative AI. The publicly available on the internet almost makes me wonder if maybe they could be using these third-party pile data sets. It's pretty intentionally vague, I would say. And then, of course, created synthetically, which is obviously they keep creating data and then they use that to then feed back into their generative model. But they do say we do not use our users' private personal data or user interactions, which is totally understandable. What makes me wonder is that publicly available on the internet stuff. Does that include data sets that are also publicly available on the internet, or just Google entries that happen to exist on the internet that they capture through their actual web crawler?
Now, I don't think that Apple, Nvidia, and any of these companies did not have the due diligence to know where they were downloading their data from, did not contain non-ethical sources, or just straight up ripped shit from the internet, okay? Now, a lot of people have said it's kind of clickbaity to say Apple is using, YouTubers' shit without, their consent, but I don't even think that's, wrong. I think if you look at this one Eleuther AI company or this nonprofit, it almost feels like ethical laundering, Like imagine if, Apple, they didn't want the backlash of basically the world saying, hey, you shouldn't just be downloading everything from the internet and building your data off of data sets that contain copyrighted information. All Apple has to do, or any company has to do, is basically say, yeah, we're using this free nonprofit's data set, okay? We didn't know. And then effectively, you can just say that you did something in good faith, when in all actuality, there are so many people that work at this company that they would have jumped in the middle and said, yeah, chief, this might not be it. But obviously, whatever saves the cost when it comes to these big tech companies is okay, and it's fine and kosher. But the thing about it is still completely unethical. Marquise Brownlee made a really good point where he actually said that he uses a service that, by the way, he pays for the minute for accurate transcriptions for their videos, which he then puts into YouTube's subtitle backend. So companies that scrape his stuff are actually unironically stealing paid work. Now, imagine if for a second, right, down the road, this is exactly what these companies want, right? So if, down the road you're making The Office, right, which I believe is getting like a remake series. I just started watching the original series of The Office. Brilliant show, by the way. Now, could you imagine if down the road Hollywood realizes that, yeah, maybe I can just write an entire season of The Office using generative AI slop and call it a day? Now, I'm sure if the slop is good enough for the average consumer on TV to think, yeah, this is fine, I can put this in the background while I'm whacking off, sure, great. But imagine if that, data set that Office remake show is written by through the AI slop tool actually used, other people's television shows or other full-on scripts that it scraped through the internet. That is a serious copyright issue right there. That falls almost into the realm of plagiarism in a weird sort of way. But a lot of these big companies don't actually appear to care. A lot of these companies are absolutely using data sets that are unethically sourced, right? It's actually such a massive issue that for anybody in the creative space right now, whether you're talking about people making their own music, people making scripts for television shows, movies, whatever, people writing YouTube videos, people researching for things even, a lot of these tools have basically existed to scrape and regurgitate information. And if that's not bad enough, what I think ultimately is really a bad part about the internet is the computational energy some of these tools have been using, right? Like the amount of extra bandwidth that is spent to scrape the internet for user-generated content and then further to regurgitate it or reinterpret it in terms of these generative AIs, I think is actually even worse. But again, ladies and gentlemen, Apple has effectively used everyone else's work without their consent. And honestly, do I think anything legally is going to happen to them? Honestly, with the amount of lawsuits that have been happening in the space, I would be interested to see if Google would ever take any of these companies to court over scraping its website or using scraped assets so blatantly. AI is one of those things where I feel like in a small crumb of ways it can assist people, but there are so many legal implications that I, honest to God, cannot wait to see the amount of lawsuits that kick up from any of these companies, from any of these organizations, from any of these entire fields once this stuff is sort of brought out and is so openly and brazenly used. But yeah, wild shit. Apple ended up using YouTuber videos without their consent. And it's not even clickbait saying that. It unironically is something that appears to have happened. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask what you think about this kind of shit because, with the amount of AI that's getting thrown into every device, it's only going to get worse. But yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.